Welcome to Wingrave, Wayfinder's resident paladin seeking redemption. Here I'm going to show you how to make your Wingrave the ultimate tank healer for all your party support needs in just a minute. So Wingrave has a kit that is very much based on tanking and healing. Like any Wayfinder, you can mix it up on him. I, however, for once didn't go against the grain, and mine is a tank healer. I will give you a couple of tips here on how to kind of tweak that if you want to put out a little more damage. He's perfectly fine solo with this build, but if you really want to take things down a little faster, you'll need to make a couple of adjustments here. Mine is usually the one I use in teams for kind of a support tanking role. So we will dive on into the build in just a minute here, and we'll start off by explaining some of his abilities. So Wingrave is a War Master, which means he has access to the Art of War. The Art of War means that your weapon abilities charge 15% faster. This will be very helpful with the sword and shield we're using, as it gives us an extra healing burst that charges up very quickly by basic attacking. War Masters also, when they use weapon abilities, they will inspire their nearby teammates, increasing their weapon power by 10% per ability level. Which means if you have a fully charged weapon, sword and shield in this case, you will increase it by 30%. Same thing with the two-handed swords. Guns, I'm not sure exactly how it works, because you don't always consume all the abilities, but that's a whole separate discussion. Wingrave's own passive is Healing Pulse. When he does melee finishers or eagle eye hits, if you are using a gun, you will heal Wingrave and one nearby ally. Generally, this is pretty easier to do with melee because eagle eye finishers only pop up if you do crits. Whereas melee finishers, you just need to do light attack, light attack, light attack, light attack, light attack, heavy attack, heavy attack, and you will slam the shield and do a melee finisher. Now we've got Wingrave's first ability there, which is his Radiant Pulse. Throws up a low forward shield. It'll block some projectiles. It does a little damage. I'm not specialized into it, but that is the one that if you put all the perks into it, it will continuously shoot out pulses, and you can actually use that kind of as a damaging ability. Again, it's not my particular preference, but that is an option. His Radiant Blade there, he'll just swing out his big giant lightsaber sword. It will generate healing pulses from the enemies, which will heal Wingrave or nearby teammates, whoever needs it most. And it generally just hits a whole lot of people. Your Radiant Blade will also recharge if you perform a melee finisher, which is important to note. You can also see we did a melee finisher because we have our weapon ability, which I'm just casting here. That gives us a damage up because of one of the Wayfinder talent passives that you will just unlock naturally by playing throughout the game. Now, Wingrave's bottom ability there is called Judgment. When you cast it, it won't seem to do a whole lot of anything, but it taunts nearby enemies. You'll see a ring appear on them to mark if they have been taunted and judged, as this skill is called Judgment. Basically, Judgment makes the enemies take more damage, taunts them, and you or allies who hit the enemies will be healed. The additional perks for Judgment, also, which I will be showing you when we get there, also adds a whole lot of different functionality to that as well for us. Now, last but not least, we've got Wingrave's ultimate. So, Wingrave's ultimate puts this giant dome down, pretty common tank power. Basically, you're invincible in the dome and consistently heal inside the dome. Unlike any of these domes you'll see in other games, you can attack from inside the dome to outside and shoot through it as well, but you always want to be inside it, of course. Not an overly complicated power at all. Alright, so the ability perks, as always, this is where you kind of define your Wayfinder build. You can see we've got full ranks in Righteous Strike, particularly for that level 3 perk where Healing Ball from Righteous Strike also replenishes Resilience. That will stop your Wingrave from having his guard broken and all the nasty consequences that occur thereof. The other two just increase your damage and healing, and also increase damage reduction while you're swinging the sword. They're nice, but they're not the particularly defining part. Obviously, that level 3 perk, that's the one that will keep your yellow bar nice and stable throughout everything. Moving down to Judgment, we basically have level 3 reducing the power of enemies that are attacking you. Level 2 increases the healing. Level 1 does additional break damage against judged enemies. All of these are very, very quality. Judgment is the one I would, if you don't have 3 ranks in Judgment on Wingrave, you're kind of, not sure why you wouldn't. Radiant Pulse is the one I don't use. That is the one you would want to rank it up if you want to do damage, because it will shoot up a whole pile of extra waves for you and then keep banging onto the enemies as well. You can also get the healing behind the shield, but I don't find that really works too well with how much people move around. Divine Aegis is the ultimate. You can build into the ultimate, but basically I just take the 1 perk for the extra duration. You might have seen it's still very, very short. Then you can get other things to increase your damage with Divine Aegis. So again, if you're trying to do that high damage Wingrave build, you might want to consider those top 2 perks instead, maybe instead of the stuff on the Righteous Strike side. That kind of covers Wingrave's skills. Let's move over to talents here. I'm not going to cover every little note on the tree. The bottom one, I don't find that prime mode's too interesting at all for Wingrave, so I don't even touch it. That hard target one is a trap. It does basically no damage. Don't ever take that, essentially. This top right one is what you would want to take if you're doing the kind of nuke ability spam Wingrave, because it will constantly shoot heals as you cast different abilities. But we want to take Grim Devotion. That gains its bonus weapon power equal to 20% of our max health. You can see right on the top, the list there of what we're getting. We're getting over 1,000 weapon power from just that node. The attack slot behind it's also quite nice because Wingrave has a lot of defense slots, so you may as well add an attack slot on there as well. There are some funky math with a lot of nodes of that, but the health one is actually reliable. We've got weapon abilities charge faster as that orange node to charge up our healing sword. After our ultimate used, I think I just grabbed that one for no particular reason. Immovable is nice. You can't be interrupted by enemy attacks. That does not include things that pull you or things that catapult you up into the air, however. It only really includes things hitting you while your guard's broken, which will let... So be very mindful of that when you're fighting those big golems or giants or the things with the tons that grab you. Immovable maybe is bugged. They might fix it, but that's a bit of a problem with that one. Jumping on over into affinity perks here, you can see we got 15, 15, 10. So we've got Crusader's Finesse for healing pulses. We've got Damage Surge also for healing pulses. Basically, those little pulses that we generate off finishers and off our Radiant Sword are constantly giving us different buffs. We're giving our teammates different buffs. And increasing our healing. We're all about that. If you are trying to do the nuke Wingrave, you probably want to go down that whole purple path. And then I would say take the green ones after that. Do like 25 purple and then 5 in the other two. So that pretty much covers the perks for that. So for weapons, we're using swords and shields. For a tank, of course, I am using Bastion just for all the extra healing possible with that healing pulse ability that it gives off. You can also use, down here is Legacy. Legacy will give your team damage shields. Technically, it might be slightly better than Healing Pulse, which is kind of redundant with Wingrave's healing. But I already used Legacy on the Kairos tank build, and I like to mix things up and show off different things rather than put the same thing on absolutely everything. Radiant Dawn is the one you're probably going to try and advance to early on. The ability on that will reduce the stamina use when you are blocking. That's very good for your tanking ability as well. Gives you a little extra range and damage as well. Everything else in here is kind of to taste. If you want to use Gun Wingrave, I do recommend shotguns because everything about him is close up and the shotguns are going to be there, which is usually going to be Tempests there. Tooth and Claw is a very offensive shield if you want to do the more nuking thing. Unity is another offensive shield if you want to do the nuking thing. It can help you get breaks off to reduce the enemy's defenses. Vanguard is just the boring shield you start with, which has a power bash to reduce enemy guard and not much else. You want to kind of get away from that one probably pretty fast. Now, moving on to accessories. So for these, I'm not going to give you too many specifics. I'm going to tell you what stats you want to chase, because you may not be able to find the specific artifacts for ages, depending where you are in the game. You can see my specific set there is the Burning Shroud Stalker with Resilience, Max Health, and Break Power bonus. You get that one from double solars, but you do have to be fairly high up to get the legendary stuff. Basically, you want to chase Max Health, Weapon Power, Resilience, and Break Power for this, roughly in that order. So the same thing on your armor here. You're not going to have the mythics and stuff I've got equipped. That's fine. Just remember those stats. Max health, weapon power, resilience, break power. Everything else is kind of secondary. If you happen to get it as a bonus stat on Echo, great, but don't concern yourself with trying to max it out for this build. If you are trying to figure out which echoes you should use, you can see I've got tons and tons of max health there. You can always sort here. That will show you your best max health one, for instance. Make sure you haven't picked up anything new that's applicable. And just kind of go through there. Again, don't worry too much about the specific echoes, specific levels necessarily. Just try and focus more on the stats that they are upgrading. You will have a much better time with the game, and that kind of fine-tuned super optimization, you must have the specific echo, isn't really necessary. Okay, so and now rush echoes. There are a lot of different rush echoes, but the best one for tanking is usually Broodmother Silreth, either in its mythic form or its regular form. Wormwood is another decent one here. You can make a big pool that heals everyone. Not so much for Wingrave because he's already healing and stuff. Silreth, though, if your guard gets broken, you get a damage shield, which is quite nice. I have the Trickster just because then I can do a dodge and get some extra aggro. It will throw some random debuffs on the enemies as well. Equilibrium down there is another one that will give you extra stamina for blocking and dodging as needed while you're tanking. If you're curious about how to get Equilibrium, check out the Wayfinder Q&A video on my channel where I answered that question already. So some other echoes you might want to consider in your tank style. There is the Darkstar Night's Maw or the regular Night's Maw. Both have the Ghost Worm that will attack things that attack you every so often. It's just some extra passive retaliation damage that you don't have to think about. There is also the Pierce Storm of Blades that you deal damage, a whole bunch of extra damage to the last person who attacked you. If you're taunting things, you're going to be fighting a boss or an elite enemy. That's going to do you a lot of bonus damage to them, piling up because they're the one attacking you. We also have good old boring but practical Commander Creed. Do a melee combo finisher and you will just explode. I'm going to throw a mythic gameplay demonstration on the end here, but if you don't want to stick around for that, remember to like, and if you found this helpful, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Drop a comment down below if you have any thoughts or questions about the build, or maybe you want to see a different style of Wingrave in a later video. Let me know. I will see what I can do to oblige you. Until then, thanks for watching, and have a good one.